Hey everyone, welcome back to the Soundbyte. My name is Andrew, and today we're going to be jumping into a bit of Sepultura. We're going to go back to their album Arise and the opening track and title track, which was one of the first songs that I ever heard from the band. It was kind of more of I guess the tail end of the thrash era of Sepultura before they kind of switched over to a more groove, new metal sort of kind of sound with Chaos AD and so on. But Arise was kind of one of the pinnacle thrash albums. It was really one of the albums that a lot of thrash fans kind of put up along with the great thrash albums of the 80s, like your Master of Puppets and your Rust in Pieces and stuff like that. And Sepultura, even though they're from Brazil, which not many bands come out of Brazil, you know, as far as thrash metal bands, as far as popular bands go. It's one of those bands that kind of sometimes gets ignored a little bit as far as like just the thrash bands that sort of were coming out of the 80s. And especially the second wave of the bands, you know, like your Testaments and Death Angels and stuff. And I don't think you can dispute the fact that Sepultura had a huge influence on so many bands, and just put out such great, fantastic albums, and Arise was one of them. So today we're going to look at the title track, the opening track, and I believe it's one of the tracks that the band still plays live to this day. Obviously, a lot of people out there probably know the history behind, you know, I guess the split, you know, after Max Cavalera left, and then kind of, you know, there's now two kind of sides of the whole thing with the current Sepultura and Max and Igor who doing their thing as well. Interestingly enough, you know, obviously the band have decided to call it quits, which it really did surprise me when I heard that announcement. Um, I didn't think, and I'm not sure what the reason was. Maybe they just had enough, or they wanted to move on to other things. I don't know. Maybe they just decided they couldn't take the music any further. But I was one of those fans who actually enjoyed the later stuff with Derek Green on vocals. I, I'm not going to say it's better than the earlier stuff, although there are some stuff that are absolutely fantastic. But I thought they were great stuff. You know, it took me a couple of albums, you know, with Derek Green, you know, with Against and Rawback and stuff, and then they finally found that sort of groove, and I just think they just absolutely killed it. So that's why partly I thought it was a bit shocking that they called it. They decided to call it a day because I thought they were still putting that quality material. So and their drummer, which is obviously he's no longer in the band now, Eloy Casagrande, when he joined the band, he is such a fantastic drummer and kind of made that band sounds so much better as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into Arise from Sepultura. Kind of one of the early intros that they started to do that eventually became a big part of their sound in the 90s. A lot of that kind of tribalistic, sort of dark sort of sound. I'll just pause it there. It is a short song, just over 3 minutes long. One of the things that I first noticed about Sepultura, especially the older thrash stuff, was the intensity and speed, especially with Igor's you know, beats per minute and the drums. Just there was something about it that was just a little bit It was faster and kind of more out there than the other thrash bands. I mean, just the sheer ferocity of the whole thing. That's what made Sepultura stand out to me as far as like out of the thrash bands. You know, it was that beat and the speed of everything. It was just I don't know. It wasn't the other bands weren't. I mean, I guess Slayer was to a certain extent, I guess, but it was in a different way. I don't know. It's hard to explain really, but it was not just faster, but it was just where Eagle was hitting those drums. It was different, and that's obviously one of the trademark things about Sepultura is Eagle's drum style, and it's just very prominent. And it's one of the first things that I noticed about the band. It's just like very intense, and trying to keep up with that stuff is just it's insane. It's amazing what they were doing back then.
I did nothing for nothing. Terrorist confrontation. Waiting for the end. One time conspiracy. I see the world old, old. I see the world dead, dead.
The other thing as well about Sepultura and particularly on this album, is that they always had great sounding. Well, maybe not the first couple of albums, which is probably why Max and Igor decided to re-record that recently. But apart from that, like Beneath the Remains and onwards, their sound production and stuff was just it was on point. It just sounded so crystal clear, and because I think the band themselves were involved in the sort of producing of it, I guess, which always has a bit of a difference. It was particularly this album, Arise. It's just the production wise, and it's just, I mean, this album's in 1991. Production wise, it was just on point, and I don't know, it just holds up really, really well. And even with the latest stuff and onwards, a Chaos AD like the production was just always a thing for the band. When you go see them live, it's another thing as well. Like they just have that intensity that they captured really well. Especially on the later ones, as far as the later ones with Max, I should say, where there was more of a sort of organic sound, I guess. This was just precision, like just on point. And the opening track obviously just sort of sets the tone for the rest of the album as well. Just intense, short burst speed.
Digging the floor. Singing some salvation. Last wish. Fatality. I'm Nolan. I'm from nowhere. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. Face the enemy. Manic thoughts. Religious intervention. Problems remain. Obliteration of mankind. On a fair sky, we shall arise.
There we go. Sepultura with Arise, the title track off their 1991 album. 1991, I mean, you got to think of 91 when grunge was just starting to come out, and there were some bands like Metallica brought out the Black Album and things like that. So it was interesting that that album came out all around that same time. The other thing that I really like about Sepultura is, which is something that I kind of sometimes look for in bands, is the fact that obviously not so much in what they did on the Thrasher albums, but certainly on the later albums. They incorporated their culture, which is something that a lot of bands, especially indigenous bands, don't do enough, you know. I mean, there are some bands who have done it, but a lot of the bands, when you sort of go outside of the Western world, I guess you could say, and look for some of the metal bands that are coming out of certain countries, whatever you wouldn't expect, and then you go listen to them, and it's like, oh, it just sounds like, you know, Metallica, or it sounds like, you know, Sepultura or whatever, you know. Um, it's great that a band like Sepultura actually incorporated their culture and sort of added different sounds and things like that, and that's what makes them unique. And that was one of the things that kind of pushed them to a different level as well, you know, especially with the Roots album. I mean, you kind of hear a little bit of that on the Arise album, and then Chaos AD kind of sort of moved into it a bit more. Their Roots was all about that stuff, you know. And it was fantastic to see a band do that, you know, embrace all that kind of that culture and all that kind of thing, you know. So yeah, I've always been a big fan of that, and I've come across a few bands over the years who have sort of done that, but few and far between there, unfortunately. And yeah, so thanks for tuning in as always, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to those who have subscribed, and follow us on social media pages. All the links are in the description there. And I will see you in the next video.